From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
My message is clear. All sides must halt fire immediately. Further escalating the situation will put the entire region at risk.
As the Israeli attack on Gaza enters its 7th day, UN Secretary-General Ban KiMoon calls for an immediate ceasefire. More than 116 Palestinians have been killed in the past week. This comes as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton leaves Obama's Asia trip for talks in Israel. We'll go to Gaza for a report, then speak with Phyllis Bennis of the Institute for Policy Studies. Then, where should the birds fly?
Israel has attacked Gaza hundreds of times in the last decade, but the scale and destructiveness of this assault was unprecedented. They called it Operation Cast Lead. We call it a massacre.
We air excerpts of a new documentary by Faida Kishta, a young Palestinian woman who filmed the Israeli assault on Gaza over 4 years ago that killed 1,400 Palestinians. Then killer robots.
Now in war, for the most part still, there's a human being who's making a decision whether or not to fire a weapon of any type. If robotics were allowed to fully develop and they were autonomous, killer robots, as I like to call them, they would be able to be programmed, set free, and make the decisions about when, where, who, and how to attack.
Nobel Peace Laureate Jody Williams teams up with Human Rights Watch to oppose the creation of killer robots, fully autonomous weapons that could select and engage targets without human intervention. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's continuing to bombard the occupied Gaza Strip after killing 34 people Monday, the deadliest single-day toll since the assault began last week. Monday's victims included 4 members of the same family, 2 parents and their 2 toddlers, who were killed in a bombing of a Gaza refugee camp that also left more than a dozen other people injured, mostly women and children. 1 woman and 2 children were killed in a separate Israeli attack in eastern Gaza City. 2 teenage brothers were killed when an Israeli shell struck a home in Rafah. And as Democracy Now! Reported live on Monday's broadcast, Israel's also bombarded a Palestinian media site for a second consecutive day, leaving 2 people dead. The Israeli journalist Amira Haas reports just 6 of the 34 latest Palestinian casualties have been confirmed as members of a militant group. In the latest attacks, Palestinians say at least 5 people were killed and 10 wounded in Israeli bombings earlier today. The killings have also spread to the occupied West Bank, with Israeli troops shooting dead 2 people taking part in protests against the Gaza assault. The overall Palestinian death toll has topped 116 over the past 7 days, more than half of them civilian, including 27 children and 11 women. The Israeli death toll from the Palestinian rocket attack stands at 3. Israel says some 90 rockets were fired from Gaza earlier today. The violence comes amidst ongoing ceasefire talks convened by Egyptian leaders with both sides in Cairo. A number of foreign officials, including Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and UN Secretary-General Ban KiMoon, plan to visit the region today, although neither Clinton nor Ban will visit Gaza. Turkey's foreign minister is expected to come to Gaza in a show of solidarity with Palestinians under attack. Speaking in Cairo, the exiled Hamas leader Khaled Mashal said the group is seeking an end to the Gaza blockade as part of its ceasefire talks.
The people of Gaza demand that their legitimate demands are met, that Israel ends its aggression, assassinations, and invasions, and to end the blockade of Gaza.
We'll have more on Gaza after headlines. President Obama has met with a number of Asian leaders, including Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao, during a visit to Cambodia. Earlier today, Obama and Wen met on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit, which Obama is attending in the 3rd and final stop of his first post-election foreign trip. Obama's stay in Cambodia marks the first to the country by a sitting U.S. president. He arrived after also making a historic visit to Burma, where he urged the ruling junta to continue with political reform.
The steps that he's already taken for democratization elections, the release of prisoners of conscience, a commitment to work with us on human rights dialogue, all can unleash the incredible potential of this beautiful country. And I shared with him the fact that I recognize that this is just the first steps on what will be a long journey.
You can go to our website, democracynow.org, for coverage of Obama's Burma visit from Monday's broadcast. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has ordered government forces to seize control of the U.S. military prison at Bagram Air Base. On Monday, a Karzai spokesperson accused the U.S. of breaching a March agreement on transferring the prison and its prisoners over to Afghan control.
The President has ordered the Minister of Defense, the Attorney General, and the Chief Commander of Bagram Prison to take serious and swift measures to ensure that a full Afghanistanization of the Bagram Prison takes place, including its management.
The Afghan government says the U.S. continues to hold dozens of prisoners in Bagram that have been cleared for release. More than 600 prisoners remain in U.S. custody. In other news from Afghanistan, France has withdrawn its final contingent of 500 combat troops from a volatile northeast region to the capital of Kabul. France will keep around 1,500 troops in Afghanistan through next year for what it says are non-combat missions. The move is part of French President François Hollande's campaign vow to bring an early end to France's involvement in the Afghan war ahead of NATO's withdrawal. Colombia's largest rebel group has announced a unilateral 2-month ceasefire at the outset of a new round of peace talks with the government. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, has been fighting the government for nearly 50 years. Talks between the two sides began in Norway last month and resumed Monday in Cuba. FARC negotiator Ivan Marquez announced the rebels would halt fighting.
Ordena a las unidades guerrilleras en toda la geografía nacional.
All guerrilla units in the entire national territory have been ordered to cease all manner of offensive military operations against public forces and acts of sabotage on public or private infrastructure from the period starting November 20th at midnight until midnight on January 20th, 2013.
The Colombian government's refused to sign on to the ceasefire, saying its military operations will continue. The retail giant Walmart seeking to block a series of protests and actions critical of its labor conditions at stores nationwide. Late last week, Walmart filed an unfair labor practice charge against the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, or UFCW, claiming it's unlawfully trying to disrupt its business. No Walmart workers are represented by UFCW or any union, but the company says it's behind a nationwide campaign seeking better workplace conditions. The move comes just days before a group of Walmart workers are preparing to strike on Black Friday, the busiest shopping day of the year in the United States. The strike will be accompanied by rallies and flash mobs outside Walmart stores nationwide. The U.S. food giant Hostess and its second-largest union have agreed to enter mediation talks after the company blamed a workers' strike when it moved to liquidate its assets and cease operations last week. The Hostess Bakers Union went on strike after rejecting a contract that slashed pensions, wages, and health benefits. While the company blamed the union for its planned closure, critics say Hostess tripled its CEO's pay and increased executive compensation by as much as 80% while it filed for bankruptcy for the second time earlier this year. The mediation was agreed to after a bankruptcy judge overseeing the case said the failure to undergo talks left a huge question mark. An Army sergeant accused of killing 5 other American service members at an Iraq military base in 2009 appeared in court Monday for his arraignment. Sergeant John Russell faces 5 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of aggravated assault with a maximum sentence of the death penalty. Russell was on his 3rd tour of duty in Iraq when he opened fire at a clinic where he'd been urged to receive counseling. A commanding officer had previously determined he should have had his gun taken away. A New York man has survived a brutal stabbing as he opened a mosque for prayer in the neighborhood of Queens. The victim, Bashar Muhammad, was stabbed multiple times by an assailant who yelled anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic slurs. Muhammad was treated for his wounds before being released. The Federal Communications Commission appears poised to push through relaxed media consolidation rules that our federal appeals court has previously overturned. A statement from FCC Chair Julius Genachowski has called for a vote to, quote, streamline and modernize media ownership rules, including eliminating outdated prohibitions on newspaper, radio, and TV radio cross-ownership. The move appears to be an effort to restore provisions struck down last year that made it easier for a company to own a newspaper and a broadcast outlet in a single market. In a statement, the media reform group Free Press criticized the new efforts, saying, quote, the FCC's headlong rush to push through these policies behind closed doors shows a blatant disregard for its own public interest mandate and the court's clear instructions. And Democrats have claimed victories over the final House seats that remained undecided from this year's elections. Overall, Democrats gained a total of 8 seats, tightening the Republican majority in the House of Representatives. 2 closely watched races in California saw Democrats oust Republican incumbents Dan Lundgren and Brian Bilbray. In Arizona, Ron Barber, a former aide to Democrat Gabrielle Giffords, has been reelected after initially replacing Giffords following her shooting in last year's Tucson shooting rampage. Meanwhile, in Florida, Tea Party-backed Republican Congressmember Alan West has finally conceded his re-election bid against Democrat Patrick Murphy following 2 partial recounts. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.